Today we're going to talk about completing the insurance application. Now, hey, look, if these videos help you, like the channel, subscribe to it, drop any questions you have in the comments there. My goal with this is to provide the entire life insurance prep exam course information in this video course. And if you see something that's outdated or incorrect, then please let me know, because I'm not perfect. So I'm going to talk about completing the application here. There's two parts. This is Leah. She is not part of the insurance application. There are two parts. There's the general information part and there's the medical information part. All right. Part one is general information, like the client's name, their date of birth, their street they live on, their address, their age, their gender, their income, their marital status, maybe social security number, maybe bank account information. This is just like general information about that person. A lot of it's identifying markers and things like that. Okay, maybe beneficiary information on any existing coverage, how much insurance that they're applying for, what type of insurance they're applying for, their occupation. Those are all things that are included in the general information part of the insurance application. So in the applications that we complete here at Senior Life Services, the top part, we fill in with the client's general information. Like I said, their name, their address, their date of birth, their age, gender, social, that type of stuff. Driver's license number sometimes. And then the second part is the medical information section. So it's the medical section. It consists of their medical backgrounds. It includes their own health issues, maybe their prescription history. It may have some familial family stuff. Maybe they had some family members who had cancer, why those family members died, things like that. Okay. Different policies have different things that they look for. Not all of them need all. Higher face amount policies are usually more extensive with the checks that they look, right? How deep they go into the health information. Small face amount policies, like the ones that we sell here, they don't require, like 99% of the time, it doesn't require medical records or anything like that. So for smaller policies, I'm talking like $50,000 or less, like the ones we do, the agent completes the medical part of the application. So the agent completes part two. And what that usually consists of, if it's a smaller face amount policy and the agent is doing it, right? It's called a non-medical application, meaning there's no medical exam, no blood tests, anything like that. It's just the agent asking the client some health questions. They're usually yes or no questions structured around like, hey, in the last 3 years, have you had a heart attack? Like that's just an example, right? Not every application with every company asks the same questions, but with those smaller policies, the insurance agent acts as the underwriter for the insurance company. That's why they're called field underwriters. Very important term here you want to remember, field underwriter. So for those smaller face amount policies, the insurance company trusts that the insurance agent's going to go out there, they're going to ask the right questions, they're going to ask the questions on the application, and they're also on the front lines, the agent is. So if you ask the client if they smoke, right, if they smoke cigarettes and they say, no, and their house smells like cigarettes and they live by themselves, or maybe who they live with is like an Olympic athlete or something, right, then you're like, okay, well maybe this person actually does smoke. That actually happened to me once, so that's why I'm bringing it up. I went to a client's house. It was a smaller face amount policy, so it didn't require any extensive medical background checks, just some basic questions. And then at that point, I asked the lady if she smoked. She said no, and then her house reeked like cigarettes, and there was cigarette smoke when I walked in, and she lived by herself. I'm like, is anybody over here today? No. I'm like, okay, well, you smoke. I don't care what you say. You smoke cigarettes. So I put down that she was a smoker on the application, even though she told me she wasn't, because I knew she was. So that's where you, as an agent, run the front line for the second part of the application process, for the medical. The insurance company is relying on you to be the underwriter and to help them assess what risk that client will pose to them based on their health. All right. You're called a field underwriter in that sense, and that's a non-medical application or a non-med. It's also called simplified issue because it's a simplified application. Okay, now the larger face amount policies that these big companies do, these are big face amount companies where someone's going to get a multi-million-dollar policy or many hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. Every company's got their own specifications. But the larger face amount policies, the agent typically does the general information part of the application where they get the basic stuff. Then the insurance company usually handles the back end medical stuff. The insurer handles the medical. That could be, depending on how big the policy is and what they're trying to figure out, it could be, they could need a blood test done, they could need a urine sample, they could do a cheek swab, they could request 10 years of medical records, they could request a bunch of stuff on that client to determine that client's eligibility for insurance, okay? So that's one of those bigger policies. That's where the insurance company handles the medical part, because they're saying, hey, we're going to take this, we're going to send someone out there, we're going to run some tests on them, height, weight, we're going to send someone from the insurance company out to make sure that this person's A-okay, good to go for this policy, and we're going to assess the risk from there. Now, what insurance companies use, they use the Medical Information Bureau. This is a very popular term in life insurance, the MIB it stands for. The MIB is a company that compiles a ton of data to help life insurance companies evaluate the risk of the client. So when you go to the doctor, say if a client had a heart attack, well, the doctor puts a note in the system, and the system recognizes that code. Say the code for heart attack is like 5412. When the insurance company runs the MIB check, they can see that person's medical history if anything has been entered into there. So for those non-medical applications, there's a lot of MIB checks. There are MIB checks for medical applications as well, where they do the extensive background. But you may be asking, hey, well, how does the insurance company know if the agent's telling the truth or if the client's telling the truth? They do check the medical history for the most part, and then they do check the prescription history, right, to make sure that the client's telling the truth. So they can see a lot of the client's health information that's entered into the MIB. But if they need further information, or if it's a larger policy, they're going to request the actual medical records themselves to make sure that they're not missing anything. Okay? So there are some basic checks that an insurance company can do on someone's health without having to check their whole health background. Without having to get their doctor to send them the file, essentially. Okay? If you do have to run a medical when you are out in the field selling insurance, and your clients have to do a medical part, make sure you follow up with it. If the doctors aren't sending the information out, make sure you follow up and you help them get that information. So the agent is the field underwriter, okay? They are the front lines. They are in the field underwriting for the insurance company. The agent makes sure that there's proper prevention of adverse selection. So like I was saying, the agent makes sure that, hey, is this person applying for insurance? If they say that they are healthy height and weight, are they really healthy height and weight, right? You go out and you just make sure that, hey, does everything appear that like this person's healthy and like they're telling the truth? Okay, you also make sure that the application is done properly for the insurance company. They rely on you to make sure that you're completing an application in the proper way. They make sure that any further questions are asked. So if the client, say they are prescribed a medication and you look it up and that medication comes up that it could be a cancer treatment. There's a popular medication that's for arthritis and for cancer. So you look, you say, oh, whoa, hey, hold on. Do you have cancer? No, it's for my arthritis. Okay, you can put that in what's called an agent statement or a producer's report, okay? It's part of the application process. It's not going to be on the final policy contract, but it's just notes that you can make to the insurance company on the application to explain certain situations that may come up, all right? Also, you make sure that the initial premium is collected. The insurance companies, they want their money. They're pretty good at making money. So when you apply, or when you have a client apply, the goal is to get a payment with the application that day. It drastically increases the chances of the client paying their bill on time and actually keeping the policy. Because the client isn't legally obligated to make their payment, right? But the insurance, as we covered in another video, but the insurance company is obligated to make the claim as long as the client pays their bill. So if you try to get that first payment from the client so that they'll keep paying their bill. Now, when you get the you get the initial premium, the best way to get the payment is with the application. So when you apply, say, okay, you get a check or you have them fill out when you're filling out an application online. A lot of insurance carriers have an electronic application now you can just put their checking account routing information on there. That's better than a debit card, okay? When you get a payment receipt is something that you'll have to issue for the initial payment to the client. Usually the companies have their own version of that. It can be on the application that gets sent to them, and they'll give you ways to do that where you can give someone a payment receipt. There's also a conditional receipt. So a conditional receipt is just saying, hey, we are saying that your policy starts today or whenever your medical exam, if it requires a medical exam, is completed, right? Whichever comes last, the application date or the medical exam. Whenever that's completed, that's when your policy will be in effect, assuming you get approved as applied for. All right. So if a client applies for the best rate for a big amount of coverage, and they make the payment, the first payment with the application, every company looks at this a little bit differently, but in general, the company is saying your coverage will start on the day you either made the payment, or you did the application, or you completed the medical exam. As long as you made your first payment, and you get approved as applied for, your coverage starts then. Okay. Now, if they get declined or approved otherwise, then obviously that could change things. All right. But usually there's a conditional receipt. It's just saying, hey, you are going to get approved for insurance under the condition, you have coverage now under the condition that everything comes back as applied for. Some companies, their conditional receipts will say, hey, you have coverage, and if you die before the policy is officially approved, then we will still do underwriting, and if we can complete it, your claim will be paid out based on whatever you'd be approved on at that time. So every company runs a little bit differently, but for the insurance course, they want you to feel like in general that if someone makes a payment with the application, the company considers the policy in force upon the application date or when the medical exam is completed, if it's required, whichever came last. So if they apply with the payment, then they have to do a medical. The medical exam would be the official coverage start date, right? Because that came last. So that is called the conditional receipt. They're saying you have it's like saying, hey, I'll pay you, and you get approved. If you you pay us and you get approved based on an earlier date than when the policy officially gets approved, because underwriting can take some time. So that's really what that says. So if the person applies and makes a payment, they can get a conditional receipt saying, hey, either whenever you applied, or, sorry to keep going on about this, but I want to make sure you guys understand this. If a policy takes 6 to 8 weeks to get approved, the person wants to make sure that they had insurance during that time, right? So the company can say your insurance coverage started on your application date or whenever you got the medical, assuming that you do end up getting approved as applied for. That's all that's saying. So it's like a tentative approval, a probationary approval. You have to make sure as an agent that you get the signatures on the application. You need your signatures, the insured signatures. A lot of time the person who is being insured, meaning their life is insured, also owns the policy and is paying for it. But there may be other situations too where, like, say a parent is getting an insurance policy out on their child. So the parent signs for the child and the parent's paying for it, even though the child's the insured. And if they're a minor, they can't sign the application, right? So in that case, the parent would sign for the child. Or if a business is getting life insurance on an employee, then the executives of the business or whoever has the chairman position they own the policy, so they sign as the owner, they sign as the person paying the bill. The person whose life is being insured has to sign as well, then the agent has to sign. So all parties involved in the application have to sign as long as they are of legal ability to sign, which is in another video where it talks about someone has to be of age and they have to be not on drugs, and they have to be of mental capacity to be able to do it. So no disabilities or anything like that. Also, you're gonna make sure all the questions are answered on the application. And if they're not answered correctly, so if a question is skipped, then the insurance company is supposed to send the application back for the person to finish. So you as an agent have to make sure every question gets answered properly on the application. Now, if the insurance company approves the policy without a question answered, then the insurance company cannot deny a claim based on a death for a reason of a question that wasn't answered. Okay? So for instance, say it says, did you have a heart attack in the last 3 years? And and that question is not answered on the application, and the insurance company approves it. for whatever the person's applying for, and then the person dies a couple years later, and the insurance company can't say, well, that question wasn't answered, and we didn't know that they actually did have a heart attack in that time frame, the time frame we asked, so we're going to decline it. They can't do that. So they have to make sure that everything is answered properly. Also, incomplete like I said, so any incomplete applications, they have to be returned back to the insurance company, bottom line. And lastly, replacements. So if someone has existing insurance company and they are replacing it, if someone has an existing life insurance policy and they're replacing it with another life insurance policy, you have to make sure that all the documents are gathered properly. Like all the documents have to be gathered properly, because it's not always in the client's best interest to replace one policy for another. You'll learn this as the course goes on, but if a client has a life insurance policy and they're canceling it to get another one, sometimes it's in their best interest, sometimes it's not. So you have to make sure that the proper documents are completed for a replacement, or else you can get in big trouble. It could be unethical and you could get in trouble for that if it's not in the client's best interest to actually replace that policy. So remember that. So in general, there's the general There's two parts of a life insurance application. There's the general information section, there's the medical information section, which checks their medical background. You as the insurance agent are the field underwriter, meaning you are the front line of the insurance company to make sure that the client is everything that they say they are, and that the application is being completed, and that the payments are being collected, and that everything's on the up and up. So I hope this helped you guys. Please subscribe to the channel, drop any questions, comments you got below, and I'd be more than happy to. I really, really hope I can help you guys crush your exam the first time around.